Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this. Welcome to episode number 2 of How It Works with Holger Live. Thanks for your interest in this Delphi live YouTube. I don't want to call it a podcast because for me, a podcast is usually audio only. I know times have changed, but I already got one question coming up in here about TMS FNC memo. I'm going to go through the appointments first, giving more people the chance to join in, and then we'll start with the topic that I've set out for today. Today, because I wanted to look at modern Delphi, a lot of developers have been using Delphi for longer than 5 years, and there have been a lot of improvements recently with the IOUtils unit and the TDateTime type, which makes it so much easier to work with dates and time than it was before. You really don't need a third-party library anymore if you want to work with date and time these days. I know I myself use the Jedi library, JCL, in order to get some functionality, and TDateTime has become a data type nowadays in modern Delphi versions. TDateTime in particular, I think it was a Delphi 11 feature when this record was done. Just a quick check. Can everybody hear audio? I see that the audio is coming through. I can see the waves and stuff. So I think we're good to go in with the video. Okay, so looking at current events in the Delphi sphere. So today we, or TMS, announced the training days 2023. That was the announcement we all saw. Finally, we're going to be in person again. Last week I couldn't talk about it. I obviously, because you saw I'm in the list of speakers. So obviously I knew that this event was going to happen because I had to look into flights and stuff. So on May 11th and May 12th, you'll have the chance to meet the team, or most of the team, I should say, from TMS. And the people that are mentioned in this particular announcement are Bruno Feerns, the CTO, skip myself, I don't want, Wagner Landgraf. He is the product manager of the TMS business tools. Then Jose, he is from Spain. He was part of the Embarcadero IDE team. And then we'll also have a special guest from Embarcadero Germany. My buddy Matthias will also be joining us. I'm quite sure he'll be able to talk about more Delphi in general. So this is a great team of people to have as a resource, because in addition to the TMS side, you will also be able to interact with with Matthias from Embarcadero and ask him your specific questions about Delphi. I think this is a great group, and everything will be covered, really. You'll get knowledge about VCL, cross-platform with FireMonkey, TMS Web Core, and then bringing it all together with multi-tier. In particular, you'll have Wagner there, who recently released TMS Sphinx, which is a multi-tenancy development tool for your multi-tier applications. So this is really a good chance to meet all of us in person, and after the sessions, ask questions. And as I know, Bruno, and you see it right here in the middle, he has a great community event planned, and it's just a good way to not only talk about the technical stuff, but also ask you questions in a nice atmosphere. I've seen pictures of the hotel. It's a great hotel, and the area in Belgium is just beautiful. So this hopefully the weather, May usually is great weather-wise. So I'm quite sure this will be a great event, and the opportunity to register is right here. Obviously, there's a 1-day ticket if you don't want to go for 2 days, but 2-day tickets, and right now there's early bird pricing available. However, that's far away in May. Next week is Valentine's Day, and it's not only Valentine's Day, it's also Delphi's birthday. And that means we are going to celebrate 28 years of Delphi from the 14th until the 16th. And it's DelphiCon 2023. Great sessions. I've given an introduction last week. In the meantime, my session has been announced on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. I'll be talking about FNC maps, how to take your data from a database, visualize it on a map with markers and clustering. So that will be my topic. And also, if you scroll down a little bit, this is a hint in my opinion. I'm not going to say more. This is looking forward with Modern Delphi on February 14th on the birthday of Delphi. So I'm quite sure this is an event not to be missed. And that's also the reason today is February 7. So next week would be February 14th. So we'll be taking a break next week. I'll be back the week after that with another Holger, how it works with Holger live. And I'm also going to review DelphiCon primarily in that episode. So thanks for the feedback that the audio is good. Let's keep going with the topic at hand. As always, I use Delphi 11. And the first thing that is not known as much are so-called class helpers and record helpers, which make TDateTime, which is what I'm going to start with, such a great class nowadays. So if we look first, if we want to use this new functionality that's included, we have to use system.dateUtils or only dateUtils if you don't want to be too verbose. And if you then start from there, let's implement this method right here. Double click on the button. Let's create a date, ldate, TDateTime. And let's look this up using code navigation. And internally, it is, of course, still a double. That is not going to change in the new Delphi versions. Dates are going to be double values in Delphi. Nobody is going to change that. However, we also have, if we go to the dateUtils, and this is where code navigation in this case sadly shows us the definition of the type, but obviously we want the additional definition. So these are all the old functions that we had and procedures to do things with date, right? Like you could basically call is today, put in a TDateTime, and the Boolean would say, hey, this is a date from today or not. If you wanted today or the current date, you could use the now function. You could simply say ldate is now. That was it. It still works. You can even say today if you use dateUtils, because that is only the date part without the time part. The key thing here is there has been an addition. And if we go to, I think it's called, if you look for the helper keyword, we see that they define Embarcadero a TDateTime helper, record helper for TDateTime. And this is new in recent Delphi, that you can define class helpers and record helpers. The one thing to remember is you can only have one active per class, per record, per type. That is a little bit of a downside, so you have to be very, very careful to, if you want to use this with your own classes, that you only have one helper active for each class. And you're going to say, like, if I want to add my own to TDateTime, you would literally overwrite the ones that are given from Embarcadero. Just be careful here. So, and with that, you extend the TDateTime type. And what Embarcadero does here, they add class functions and they also add functions. Class functions means you can literally use the TDateTime type and then call this. Let me show this to you. So, for example, you say TDateTime dot, and these are the class methods, class procedures, class functions. And this is how you would get in modern Delphi the current time, or, and this is something that I think wasn't as easy back in the day, you get the UTC, the Universal Time, Zulu time for you military people out there. So this is the easiest way to initialize a new date. That's literally TDateTime dot, and I want yesterday, tomorrow, today, the current time in UTC time, and now. If somebody has a problem with UTC, just let me know in the chat. I'll explain it a little bit more, but I think the difference is like if you have now, it is the local time where you are right now. So for me, this would be East Coast, United States right now. And if you're located in Germany and you run the same method, we would have two different times. I would have 11:11 right now, and you would have most likely +6. So you would have 17:11 as your time. So that's the difference. If we call now UTC, we would both get the same value, and that is the reason why in databases and in general, it's good to work with now UTC, and then when you show it on the client, you convert UTC to the local time of the person that sees that value. So that is the first big difference. For example, let's instantiate LDate with the current date, now UTC, and let's call it LDate time to make it really, really obvious that we also have a time value in there. And now, as this is a TDateTime variable, it's not an instance because it's a record, it's not an object, we can say period or dot, and now we get all the different operations on that type. And this is really, really cool. So because now you can say LDate time is today, get year, get month, get week. So for example, get week, I prepared this, I can say memo, .lines.add, LDate time get week. That's not a string, but again, this is another class helper for all the data types that are for the primitive data types. Delphi provides these, so you can literally say get week dot to string, then you get a string of this. This is the new way to make it very, very easy to write code, because you don't have to go back and say int to string and then braces. You can literally read it from left to right what you want to do. So LDate time, get the week, convert that to string, and then we add it to the memo. Let's run this. Date, tinker, boom, 6. So this is the 6th week in the year of 2023. And the advantage of this is, in my opinion, pretty clear, because you can so much easier now also have access to year, increment the year, increment the month, increment the week. Working with dates has become really, really, really simple. Finally, and this is something I realize now while I present this to you, that is something I have to give in addition, is the T-time zone data type. And that is a class that allows you to calculate date and time values depending on the time zone. The cool thing is this T-time zone has a local property. And again, this is the type. This property is defined on the type and not on the instance. So you don't need to do ttimezone.create. Just use it like this, local dot. And back in the day, this was literally the way to get date time values in UTC and stuff. However, what you can do is you can ask things like, is it daylight time or is it not? These kind of things. Or you can get the UTC offset of remember, we're in local, you can get the UTC offset of the time zone the current user is in. Okay, so you can literally say, hey, all my database values are in UTC. So UTC offset means that's the difference the local user that is using my application right now needs to be aware of. And what you can do, you can simply call the method toLocalTime. That means you can say toLocalTime, LDate time, then you have the local time of the UTC time. Let me output both inside of the memo, so LDate time, And again, we have a toString on this one as well, and you could even use tformat settings in order to format this date. That's gonna be the last part that I'm going to show you with regards to dates. So toString, very, very simple. So in this case, it's gonna use the default settings that I defined in my windows here locally. So I'm gonna say memo.lines.add. And so that's the original date time. And this is also a function. So I'm going to say here, memo lines add, and then go from there. So let's run this. So we should get 2 times. One, the time, of course, I have to add to the string. One is the time as it is UTC, and then the time locally here on my system. So let's see, that works. Boom. So see, UTC time is 4:16 p.m. and local time is 11:16 a.m. right now. So if you make it your habit to always work with UTC internally, databases, files, everything, make it UTC, and you're always able to display the actual date to your users. Also, it is very, very important to remember that if you write an API, for example, this API should always return UTC so that people that use your API can convert the time to their needs, to the time zone that they need it in. You never want to be like, hey, this is the time in this time zone, because if there is also a date attached, people actually need to do all the calculations, like, is it like daytime savings time? Is it not? No, it doesn't matter if you have it in UTC, because then you can use algorithms from the programming languages that do all these things for you. Finally, the tformat settings is another interesting record, I think. Not class. See, it's a record, so you don't need to call create, even though I think they did like something like a create or something for that thing. The main thing to remember is that you can, if that L format contains the current settings for your computer that you run this on. So if you do create, you can see it right here. You can either just call create, then it creates the ones for the current system. But if I don't want to create, for example, here I do Germany. I'm always not sure if I do need to say DE, like Germany, or just DE. Let's just try DE first. This is a live session. And then you can simply, into string, you can simply add L format, like so. So both dates should now be output in German date format, which means that the month and the day are actually switched and the dashes become periods. That's how in Germany dates are being written. Let's do this. See, now everything is in German format instead of American. Also, the AM PM goes away, and this is really, really, I mean, this is possible in any programming language. I don't want to make any fuss about that, but it has become much, much easier in Delphi to do these things than it was like a couple of years ago. And you have access to these things. For example, if you want to say my time values are not supposed to be separated with colons, I want like a dash, and you can do that, like, or a plus sign. Let's do this. And it doesn't only work for output, also if you ever use it for input with date to string, for example, if you read information from a comma separated file, text file of any sort, you can use this to automatically recognize date time values in a certain format by modifying this tformat setting. This is a variable. This doesn't change your settings on the system at all. Okay, like this. And there you go. The colon now has been replaced with a plus sign. Okay, any questions about date time that you would like to have answered? Otherwise, I'm going to switch over to IOUtils, another great addition that we had recently. Okay, we'll get started with this. So IOUtils, in my opinion, has been built because a lot of Delphi developers still used assign file, reset, rewrite, close file, these kind of things, and weren't really getting comfortable with streams. Another thing is that other programming languages like C# introduced these stream readers, text reader, text writer, all these object-oriented mechanisms that looked very, very different in Delphi. And IOUtils also contains things to basically bring those languages a little bit closer together. But for me, the main thing in these things, I'm not going to talk about streams today, the main thing is tfile and tpath and tdirectory. Because again, we use third-party libraries in order to find out certain things like creating directories, looking up things in directories recursively, or finding files that I just remember, like what I did when I was looking for a file was like a find first, find next, and then you had to do a find close. All these with a t-search rec, these things are no longer needed because we have IOUtils. And if we jump into this, we have two main classes in there, or not two, a couple more. And it's not even classes. I have to correct myself all the time. It is records. So we have a record for a directory, tdirectory, and we have the same for, of course, we have a tdirectory helper for tpath, and we have the same for tfile. Tfile will be coming up as well. So you might wonder what is the difference between path and directory. Directory is literally the just the directory part. File is the file name, and tpath is directory plus file name, the whole path, network path, whatever it is. And that is the nice thing. All these functions and procedures are written with modern operating systems in mind, meaning stuff that wasn't there when Delphi was conceived in 96, 95. Those things, there was no documents directory, I think. There was no shared documents path and all these things. These came with NT and then Windows 2000. So that is now nicely in there. So let's start with tpath, which helps you to find certain directories. So you can say tpath get, and there you go. You can say get, for example, random file name, temporary path. Home path is the user's home directory. Documents path, documents directory of the user. Shared documents path of the system. Library path, think or remember that Delphi is no longer just Windows. Library path means it is the directory of your application, right? The executable. So that literally is, if we do this here, and I add this to the memo control right here, this should be the file name of basically directory plus, there you go. See, it is the directory of my application where I created this application. So this is how easy it has become to get the name of the application. Now let's say you have your databases in the subfolder, or configuration files is a better example. Configuration files in the subfolder, etc. And then my settings.ini. So you would build some string concatenation, would look if there is a backslash involved and all that kind of stuff. So let's say you have it in etc. And then you have it in my settings.ini. That is your file, and it should be below the application directory. So now you can do this, and this is really, really cool with modern Delphi. You can do this, and you can say tpath.combine, and then you can combine the application path, for example, with this file name construct. If you start this, you get, what did I miss? Oh, one brace. The full file name for the application directory, the next directory, and the file name. Great, huh? And if you want to know if this file exists, back in the day, we did file exists like this, right? You can do this now with tfile.exists type. The idea is you can, it's tfile, and then you can literally do everything that has to do with a file. You can do all the things that were different procedures, different functions spread over many units. You can do this all now nicely collected together to files, directories, and path. So you see for tfile, you cannot only check if it exists, you can get its size, its attributes, its creation time in universal time, when it was last accessed, last written to, the symlink target. You can move a file, open a file, and that is also very neat. It immediately transfers the whole file contents, or it opens up the file and you have automatically a reference to a file stream and then can read that file. There's also one thing I really, really like. It's called read all bytes or read all lines. That immediately reads the whole content of a file. For example, read all text reads the whole file into a string, and read all lines reads it in an array of string, or read all bytes reads a binary file into an array of bytes. So these methods make basically things that were multiple function calls much, much easier to access. Also, like if you have tDirectory, for example, again, also here you can check if a directory exists. You can decide if you want to follow the link or not, but also you can get the attributes for a directory. You can delete directories. You can create directories. You can also get the current directory that you're in. You can set the current directory that you want to be in. Get logical drives. I don't know what that is in directory. I guess they didn't want to do a class above all that. Again, same access times and all that kind of stuff that we had before. You can get the parent directory, and these are the powerful methods right here. You can get directories that are inside of that directory by simply getting them all, and then you can specify search options and can even use a filter predicate to filter only certain directories. So that is really, really, really handy. And back in the day, this was like a find, file find, whatever, and find next. A very, very not so easy to understand loop. Now it's a simple call, especially if you want all the files in the directory. You simply call get files. And you can also do get files with a mask and certain file other options. And you can even specify a more complicated predicate where you can write your own method that then decides if the file is supposed to be listed or not. So get files is very, very powerful. It offers very different kinds of data types like string array and so on. So we also have the same thing for the system files. And you can also ask if the directory is empty. You can move a directory, copy a directory. This IOUtils has saved me so much time since it exists. You have no idea. I could literally get rid of a lot of third-party stuff that I was carrying around with me. This has now all been replaced with tfile, tDirectory, and tpath. Those cover pretty much everything. That's it. If there are no further questions about this, asking for special things, this was my introductions to IOUtils and TDateTime, the new functionality. And as said, next week, join us for DelphiCon. It's going to be a great conference. It's online only, yes, but if you want to, for example, meet me or the other people from TMS and Matthias Eising from Embarcadero, have a look at the TMS event in Belgium, beginning of May. That is a event where you can actually meet us in person and not only here on the feed. I'm waiting a little bit longer if there are any questions. If there are no questions, thank you again for joining me for this live broadcast. Again, if you have topic suggestions, otherwise we'll see in 2 weeks time. That is going to be, is going to be 1 week after DelphiCon. Should be the 21st, I think. I think we'll keep the time the same either, or I might move it up an hour or not. I'm not sure yet, but it's going to be 1 week after DelphiCon for sure. And I'll be talking, reflecting on DelphiCon for once, and I might also have something Delphi specific again. I'm thinking about anonymous methods, for example, to bring an example for that. I want to keep these short and not too long because your time is precious, and if you have to be like multiple hours in order to get like an introduction to a topic, that doesn't make any sense. Could you get into detail of the predicate function, please? Yeah, wonderful. This is what I love about live broadcasting, because I was like, wow, there's even predicates, because I use Spring for D and as soon as it goes into predicates. Let's look at that together. I mean, I'm not afraid to look at this. Let's see. Get files. Let's see, T directory, right? Was T directory that we were looking at. That was what your get files. And then we have here the predicate is of type T directory T filter predicate. Okay, so let's say I go into my directory G, for example. That's safe to do. And there we have as search options, or can we define a predicate? We can define a predicate right away here. See, T filter predicate. So let's see what this T filter predicate is. And this is sometimes not that easy with Delphi to find out. So let's see, T filter predicate, search for it. And there it is. It's a reference to a function. So that is actually an anonymous function, and you get the fingerprint right here. And what this means is you get from, for each and every file or directory, depending if you use it for T file or T directory, you get the path and the information, the good old search rec, see? And then you can return a Boolean value if you want to filter the file, and you say false, don't show it, or true. And in order to do this, you copy paste the declaration, or you remember it. And then literally this is the parameter of a function, believe it or not. And then you can do begin and no semicolon because it's a parameter. And this is your function call. And here you then would say to filter the file or not. That's what a predicate does. A predicate returns true if the file, in this case, is supposed to be listed, considered, and false, you don't want it. Let's just say, okay, we always say true, okay? So this get files, our files, I think gives us a, let's see the data type, we get back a, why does it tell us what we get back type-wise? We get back a T array of system string. So what we can do is we can do for in, and then we can do L file name, in files, do memo.lines.add, and then we can do L file name. Okay, so, and of course L file name is not defined, so we say L for var to declare it as an inline variable. And with that, so these are all the files that I have here. This is the output. The other one is the previous output. So these are the 3 files I have in there. And let's say I only want files that have the extension JPEG, for example, or it's wonderful that I have 2 different, only .db I want to list, okay? So what we can do here in the predicate, you can now look at what the file looks like, because path is the file. So you can then use in there helper methods. For example, L file is T file. I think. Then you can do t file dot is or extension. There is something like in there, or it's in path. That's always confusing. Extension. So here you see you can get the get extension from a file name. That is going to be our path that is handed to us. Okay. And then you can say if is, or you can simply say result is tpath extensions equals .db. So this way you filter out all the files that have db on it. Okay. So let's comment this out and run this. Okay, we get nothing. So let's see, get extension path. Let's maybe without a period. Out of something I don't know. Okay, let's see. Get extension path. This is the path that comes in and equals db. So var l extension is tpath get extension path. Let's see what's in this variable. That's what I want to know. And we have the debugger. Let's see what lx is. So the first time we get g as the path, wonderful. And the second time we get g again. So literally, if you can see, search rec is the one I should look at. Search rec.name is what I need to look at. Okay. So here we do search rec.name. That's the file name. And then I should be good. Let's say lx equals, I tried .db again, and here we go. See, only the db file is listed. So a predicate is an anonymous method. How do you get the fingerprint? There's no other way but looking up in the documentation or in the source code by clicking on the method, and then you get navigated into there, and then you can look up the type right here. This is even made a little bit more difficult because this is a local type that is tied to T directory. This type is not even available anywhere else but with T directory. And this function here says it gives you the path, and then with search rec for each and every file that is being iterated for get files, and then you can decide by returning either true, yes, it is appropriate, or false, no, I don't want it, and filter it that way. That's what a predicate is for. Did this answer your question, Peter? I hope it does. I know that there's some kind of lag to the chat, but this is like an example for using a predicate. You can do this much, much easier though without a predicate. You can do, what you can do is you can do var files is T directory dot get files g, and then you can literally specify a search pattern. You can say star.db. Okay, so for the search pattern, you don't need a predicate. A predicate, you can literally put complex operations like looking up things in a database and stuff like that. It just, remember, it has to be performant and everything, but that's what a predicate is really for, that you can do more complex operations than just comparing the predicate, the extension. You can also now basically list all the files that were created after a certain date, for example, and you compare the file access date and stuff like that. That's what the predicate is for. Okay, thank you, Gary, for the feedback. I appreciate it. And please spread the word about that we're doing this live and not only record it, because you have, as you just saw with Peter here, you have the ability to ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Please subscribe to the channel so you get notified about upcoming events, and also spread the word in the Delphi community that How It Works with Holger is also now available live. Thank you so much for being here today, and enjoy DelphiCon next week. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye.